It's time for Survivor Angels, an approach to strengthen trauma survivors. Here, you can escape what draws negativity and engage your positive abilities and the gifts that you've always had. Let's activate your angels. And to help you on that journey, here's Chaplain Jodi.
There's something strange about surviving something big. When the crisis ends, when the hospital visit is over, when the relationship ends, when the diagnosis settles, and when the grief finally lands, you expect the world to look the same. But it doesn't. And sometimes the strangest part isn't that you changed. It's that the world changed while you were trying to stay alive. You step back into life and realize something subtle, but undeniable. Everyone else kept moving. News cycles continued. Boy, do the news cycles continue. Cultural attitudes shifted. I don't know about that. I think we're kind of frozen in time at the moment, but that can happen. That is part of it. Technology accelerated, always faster and faster and faster, and people adapted to things that once seemed impossible. And suddenly you feel like you're standing slightly out of time. Not broken, not lost, just out of sync. Well, this episode is about that feeling. It's about when the world went through trauma too, which has many, many times. So let's name something honestly. The last decade has been traumatic on a global scale. Think about what humanity has collectively lived through. The COVID-19 pandemic shut down entire cities almost overnight. Airports went silent. Schools closed. Hospitals filled beyond capacity. And millions of people woke up each day to infection counts scrolling across the bottom of their screens. For the first time in generations, people everywhere were asking the same question. Are we safe? And during that time, normal life paused. Remember how birthdays happened over video calls? We actually did a few holidays that way with family. Funerals were attended on screen. I recorded several of them for the families to use how they needed. And parents became teachers overnight. Oh boy, new meaning to homeschooling, right? Well, the pace of life shifted dramatically. And even though the world reopened, something about humanity didn't fully go back to the way it was. People were more anxious, more aware of mortality, more aware of fragility. Even people who didn't personally lose someone began living with a subtle sense that life could change overnight. The world wasn't so comfortable anymore. Didn't have our nice, warm, cozy spots like we used to. And if you were already someone who had survived something, whether personal trauma, illness, loss, you noticed this shift immediately. Because suddenly the rest of the world had tasted something you already knew. Uncertainty. I wonder if that made you a little better equipped for it than maybe other people. Because we've got to talk about the acceleration of the world. At the same time, humanity was grappling with this vulnerability. I said technology accelerated. Artificial intelligence appeared in daily life almost overnight. It's like, where did that come from? And people began talking to machines the way they used to talk to friends. Social media became louder, faster, more reactive. And every day seemed to bring a new crisis, like climate anxiety, political polarization. Yep, way back then. Actually, it was even before that, but that really amped it up with technology. War returning to Europe with the invasion of Ukraine, and global tensions rising. And now we've got Iran. The news cycle stopped being daily. It became hourly. And in the middle of all of that noise, survivors often experience something unusual. They slow down. While the world speeds up, survivors move at a different pace. You see, when you survive something serious, your relationship to time changes. Biggest piece is urgency fades. Not because you didn't care, that's not why, but because you've already seen how quickly life can shift. So when the world panics over headlines, you sometimes find yourself watching quietly, not detached, just measured. You notice people reacting quickly, forming opinions instantly, arguing passionately over things that may not matter in 6 months. And you think, life is more fragile than this conversation. That perspective can feel very isolating, but it's also wisdom. And then there's the cultural pressure to move on. Modern culture, you see, has a very strong message. Move on. Get back to normal. Just be productive again. Return to the pace of life that existed before. But survivors know something important here. There is no true return. The person who crossed that threshold of illness, trauma, loss, near-death experience doesn't come back unchanged. And trying to pretend otherwise creates tension inside the body. You feel it when conversations feel shallow. There are so many shallow conversations out there. I like to turn them off. And you feel it when people rush past grief. No, you need to sit with grief. It has no timeline, and everybody reacts to it differently. And so do what you need to do for you. And you feel it when people act like stability is guaranteed because you know better. Ain't nothing guaranteed, peeps. Nothing. Except death and taxes, of course. Survivors have a quiet maturity. One thing that doesn't get talked about enough is the maturity that comes through survival. Not superiority, and it's not enlightenment. Just maturity. When you've seen how fragile life is, certain things lose their grip. Petty arguments, social competition, let it go. Performative success, and you begin valuing different things. Quiet mornings, love quiet mornings with a cup of coffee, watching the sun come up. Honest conversations. Honest conversations are healing, even if you have differing viewpoints. But when they're honest, they're good for your soul. And moments of genuine connection, which happens in those honest conversations. You notice beauty in ordinary moments because you know those moments are not guaranteed. So you savor every one of them. And when you look at the world now, fast, reactive, constantly outraged, you sometimes feel like you're living in a different emotional climate than everyone else. It's how some people get through all of this without the outrage. You see, the world has a collective nervous system because something else happened during the last few years. Humanity's nervous system changed. During the pandemic, people lived in prolonged uncertainty. The body wasn't designed for that. And the result is a global atmosphere of low-level anxiety. You see it in small ways: short tempers, exhaustion, difficulty focusing. People are carrying stress that they don't fully understand. Survivors often recognize this immediately because they've already learned what stress does to perception. They recognize the signs: hypervigilance, emotional fatigue, the feeling that something is always about to happen. When is that shoe gonna drop? And in a strange way, survivors sometimes become the calmest people in the room because they've already faced the storm. And there's the point where awareness meets a chaotic world. There's a unique challenge that comes when awareness deepens in a chaotic environment. You notice more, not just personally, collectively. You notice how fear spreads through social media. Fear spreads through the drama. Got to get rid of the drama. Just speak to facts. How quickly misinformation travels. Fact check, fact check, fact check, fact check. There's so many places you can fact check. And how easily people are pulled into outrage. All of this requires work on our part. We can't let someone else do the work for us. To heal us, we have to do the work ourselves. And sometimes you feel like you're watching humanity wrestle with its own nervous system, and that can feel heavy, but it also can clarify your role as a survivor. Not to fix the world, not to correct everyone, but to remain grounded. Angels are there in that turbulent time. Throughout history, angel stories often appear during times of upheaval, war and exile and plague. Oh, you can find stories, my gosh, moments when human certainty collapses. During World War II, many soldiers wrote about inexplicable moments of protection. During the 1918 influenza pandemic, people described very strange coincidences that preserved life. And during disasters like earthquakes, shipwrecks, accidents, survivors sometimes report sensing presence. It's very subtle, usually. Sometimes it's more. Because generally it's not dramatic. It's just steady. These stories don't appear during comfortable times. They appear when humanity is reminded of its fragility. That pattern has repeated for centuries, and it's still happening right now. Because we need to learn how to live between awareness and ordinary life. One of the hardest things about surviving something significant, is learning how to live in ordinary life again. Because you still have to pay bills, you still have to go to work, you still stand in grocery store lines, but inside, something is shifted. Now you're aware of the deeper currents of life: mortality, timing, meaning. The challenges then become learning how to carry that awareness without becoming distant from everyday life. Not withdrawing and not about becoming cynical, but also not pretending everything is superficial. That balance takes time. But that's where you use the gift hidden in survival. So as we've said, survival changes perception. But it also offers something quietly powerful: perspective. When the world panics, you can breathe. When others rush, you can pause. When fear spreads, you can remain steady, not because you're immune to pain, but because you've already faced something that rearranged your priorities. That steadiness matters more than you realize. Other people notice it, even if they don't understand it. And that's why survivors matter right now. In times of global uncertainty, people who understand fragility become anchors. They don't feed panic. They don't deny reality. They remain grounded. Humanity needs that kind of presence right now. Not louder, angry, or screaming voices, steadier ones. It's about the quiet role of survivor angels. The purpose of this podcast has never been to dramatize survival. It's to orient it, to remind people that surviving something difficult doesn't separate you from humanity. It can deepen your connection to it. Because once you understand fragility, you understand compassion differently. If you feel out of sync with the world sometimes, probably now. If conversations feel faster than your heart can move, or that it wants to move. If the pace of modern life feels strange after what you've been through, that doesn't mean you're lost. It may simply mean you've seen something that others are only beginning to understand. Life is fragile. Time is precious. Presence matters. And sometimes the most powerful thing a survivor can do is simply remain steady in a world that keeps speeding up. Thank you for being here. Until next time, stay grounded, stay present, and remember, survival doesn't remove you from the world. Sometimes it prepares you to stand more calmly inside it. Activate your angels.
Thanks again for joining Chaplain Jodi on Survivor Angels. For more information, go to chaplainjodi.me. That's chaplainjodi.me. And on Facebook at Survivor Angels-Chaplain Jodi. This is Dave Schrader. Until next time, sending you off to activate your angels.